Alright, so I'm getting back into over-the-board chess this winter, and I'm going to start on the ChessGoals over-the-board master study plan. So what I did is I printed out the 12 weeks of the study plan. They look like this. Each day there's activities to check off as well as extra credit for the week. So today's study plan is going to be do a 5-minute puzzle rush, play one 15-10 game, and analyze the game. So let's start with the 5-minute puzzle rush. I've not done a puzzle rush in a while. We'll see how well I can do for speed. Usually they start out with checkmates. It is late at night, which tends to make me calculate a bit slower. But this is also good training for my Tuesday night games, which can go up till about 9:30 in the evening. So train me to still be sharp at night. Most of these aren't too bad so far. Looks like they're all checkmates. This one must be getting a queen. And what is this one? Oh, this one's a checkmate. Tricky. Double check. Checkmate. Must be free knight. Free knight. Oh, that one gets me sometimes. For whatever reason, I always am tempted to take the pawn instead of the rook. Okay, now I gotta refocus. Oh. That was an easier one. Back rank mate. I think take. Queen takes, rook check. What is this one? Take knight and then fork. Or take rook and then fork. Yeah. Well, this one must be like a bishop trap. I think we gotta take this way so that our queen helps defend c4. Makes sense. Queen takes rook. This one, something with the bishop check and then h-file mate. Yep. Oh, this is like straight out of the opening. I feel like I should know this. d5 and d4. I've gotten that type of position in Sicilians before. This one should be trade rooks and then go get a queen. This one is trade rooks. I don't see it right away. Oh, what's the answer? What am I missing? Wow, that was a hard one. Should be rook f1. Okay, so I do have some time on the clock. I definitely wasn't playing as fast as I could here. Oh. All right, 34. Not too bad. So I'll try to improve on that next time. I think I'll get my speed back. All right, so we got d4 against a 2100. Let's go with d5. And we'll do a Slav. Triangle. Well, they play knight c3. This is from the ChessGoals repertoire. Oh, e3. All right, now we get a Dutch. So when they go e3, our repertoire recommends the Dutch. And I have to admit I'm not real up on all the exact move orders, but I know the general ideas, so hopefully that'll be enough. Bishop d3. So one line that I recommend that I really like is this early knight h6, and then the knight heads to f7, and this knight comes over to f6, and then we look to play g5. So that's going to be the idea. And if takes here, I can take back with the e-pawn because the bishop guards f5, which their bishop is looking at. So b3, the idea is bishop to a3, trying to trade off my good bishop. And that's okay. I can actually allow this trade to happen and keep my development going. I think queen to f6 is a move. Like bishop a3, queen f6, or maybe knight f6. And leave the king in the center for now. Because I want g5, g4. So bishop a3. What's the best way to ignore that threat? I think knight f6. Because then if c takes d, I can always play e takes d, and this bishop guards the pawn still. Yeah, so he's looking for c takes d. That's pretty apparent here. I'm still going to go this way. If c takes d, I can take back this way and play bishop d6, bishop d7, rook c8, and try to keep some control of the c file. Because it's actually pretty hard for white to infiltrate on the c file in these lines with the help of the bishops. I'm still looking at this, g5, g4. And the f8 bishop I could park on d6. That doesn't seem too bad. Eyeing the h2 pawn. So again, I'm looking at c takes d. I can't get away with this because bishop takes f5. Okay, what if bishop a3 is played now? I could take knight takes and queen d6. It's a little uncomfortable for that knight. The knight doesn't really want to be on a3 unless it knew it could get to b5. So that would be one option. Bishop to b2 would be another strategy for white, with the idea of knight e5 and maybe playing pawn to f4. A lot of players do this because they see that f-pawn on f5 and they're a little bit worried about this kingside pawn storm, so they'll actually go out of their way to get a pawn onto f4. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see an idea like knight e5, bishop e2. Knight c3 also makes sense. Threatening c takes d, knight b5. So in that case I might go bishop d7 so that I have rook c8 ready. There it is. a6 feels a little too slow. That knight can always go out to a4. So bishop d7, c takes d, knight b5 and bishop b5, they both look okay for me. I'm going to go rook c8 next. I could put this knight on d6 to help defend f5, but I don't think that's necessary. Let's get this queenside developed. I know it's almost always useful to have that bishop on d7 so that we do have rook c8 as an option. So that's not a move that I want to spend a lot of time on. I think this just makes sense. And next I'd like to play g5. Either rook c8 or g5. Oh, didn't mean to pre-move that. So I'm thinking bishop b2 or bishop to d2 for white. C takes d, I have c takes d. g5, g4. And then it comes down to whose play is faster. White on the c-file or my kingside attack. a4. Okay, so bishop a3 is still the idea. They really want this trade of dark squared bishops. I think this is a good chance to play g5, bishop a3, g4. Let's go for it. So bishop a3, I'm planning g4, and if they take f8, I'm going to take with the king and put the king on g7 next. Oh, maybe I could take a3 again, because this rook also looks misplaced on a3, just like the knight looked misplaced on a3. I think the rooks both want to be on the c-file. So bishop a3, maybe I could take, queen e7, and I'm ready to castle and connect the rooks. That looks pretty interesting. And I still have this attack ready to go, g5 to g4, and then knight coming up to g5 next. Knight e4 is another move that I'm looking at. Okay, they're rerouting this knight to e2. C takes d could still be played. I'm guessing they want the knight playing to f4 eventually. So how do I want to play this? g4 comes with an immediate tempo on the knight. Knight e4. So my candidate moves are g4, knight e4, bishop d6. So let's say g4. I think knight here. And then my opponent probably wants to play f3 and knight f4. So I think I should wait a little bit on g4. Maybe bishop d6 first. If bishop a3, or rook c8. Rook c8 could be a good move. And see what my opponent does with this bishop. Because rook c8 is still developing. And if c5, I'm kind of happy to see that. I can still focus on the kingside attack. Let's look at bishop d6, bishop a3. The problem is this g-pawn will be loose. If I have to play knight takes d6, the g-pawn could get captured. I'm liking the look of rook c8 because this knight on e2 is not immediately doing anything. I'm now even more prepared for this trade, and I really want to see where white puts the bishop. I want them to commit that bishop to a3, or take a tempo and play bishop b2 or bishop d2, and at that point I could play bishop d6. So if that bishop moves to one of these two squares, I'm going to go bishop d6, I think. If it goes to a3, I think I might misplace this rook, and then go for my attack. And if knight g3, then that knight's not ready to come to f4 after I push. So I don't think my opponent wants to move this knight, and I'm not sure where they want to move this bishop. So that's what I really like about rook c8, is I'm putting white in this position where maybe they don't know where to put those minor pieces. They don't want to commit yet. They're both kind of waiting. White wants a rook on c1 though. So my feeling is this bishop should move right now. And it's probably going to go to a3. So bishop a3, let's see. g4 right away would be a candidate move. Taking the bishop on a3 is another idea. I think I would take a3, play queen e7, and then castle. I like the look of that position. Oh, bishop to b2. Okay, so now e5 has an extra defender. Knight to e5 could be an idea. So g4, knight e5 maybe. But now I get this bishop out like I wanted. So I'm happy to see that. C takes d5, I still have to take back with the c pawn, because I don't want to lose f5. And I don't think taking back with the knight is good, even though there's a knight b4 threat. That would allow white to open up the center with e4, and my king is still in the middle. So I do have to keep an eye on these bishops pointing towards my king. I want to keep the center locked up. So the only way that white can really open the center is move the knight, play f3, e4. Which could be a good idea. But if this knight moves, then I'm looking at attacks on the h2 pawn. Yeah, these are kind of fun positions when you get this kingside attack. There's a lot of dynamic play. And that's why we named the ChessGoals course the Dynamic Slav. Because we looked for lines that had fighting chances from the black side. Even if Stockfish said maybe white was better. As long as we had chances to play for the win. And they score well in practice, that was good enough. So like a lot of these Stonewall Dutch positions, Stockfish is not a huge fan of, but that's okay. They're not they're not very easy to crack. So what's he gonna do here? I think knight e5 is probably being looked at. Rook c1 would be another option. Oh, bishop to a3. Okay. So now I'm looking at queen e7, double attack. And if takes, I could take with the queen. And the reason I don't want to take with the knight is because this knight can easily come in here, and also this g-pawn is loose. So if queen here, take, queen takes, there's no knight e5. I still have knight e4 as an idea. I am stuck with the bad bishop in the end. Dropping back, I think, makes that bishop too powerful. Well, let's see, g4 right away. There's no bishop takes bishop. Because I could take this knight first. So I do have time to play g4 if I want it. I think I want queen e7. So bishop takes d6, I'm taking back. And now I still have this pawn front coming. Could still castle. And I have knight e5 defended twice. Knight and queen. I would expect a move like rook c1 here, trying to build up on the c-file. And I have to decide how I want to play this. Knight e4, very tempting move. This is a bad bishop. So the other thing I could do is castle and try like bishop e8 and bring the bishop out this way. I've seen that strategy before. Oftentimes this knight will move unprovoked. So I might not have to play g4, and this knight will just move on its own, trying to do something with the f-pawn. And if this pawn can sit on g5 for a while, it defends the f4 square so that there's no knight f4 by white. These lines are also kind of fun. h5, h4, h3, just keep pushing. Or get the pawn all the way up to h4 and then play g4. Because then there's options on which pawn to push. But I do have to think about this bishop long term. I don't want a position where I have no attack and it's a good bishop against a bad bishop. So I really need to keep dynamic play. And sometimes what you can do here is castle, and if all these pawns are defended, you could maybe even play for e5, e4. But you really got to make sure the king is safe and that these weaknesses are all defended. Oh, so there we see h4 with the idea of knight f4. So white really wants knight f4. Ah, this feels like a bad move though. I don't think this could be good. This is giving me options. I could play h6. I could take, drawing this knight out. Rook g8. Coming down the g file pretty quickly. Oh, I don't think this can be good for white, but how do I respond? My first instinct is to play h6 and just keep waiting on this position a little bit. Because maybe after h6 I could play knight g4, eyeing the checkmate on h2 and then take here next. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so h6, white doesn't want to take me and open the h file. So this is going to be a waiting game. But my threat now is knight g4. There's no way to kick this knight. This knight can't move because of queen h2 mate. And then I'm going to play g takes h4 next. And push my pawn up to h3. Bring the other knight to g5. That's looking pretty good. But let's quickly just look at the other options. g4. This knight moves. Knight f4 is coming. I could play knight h5 there to defend it. And then white will probably play g3, trying to lock everything up, and this bishop is still going to be a bad piece long term. Yeah, that does a good job locking everything up. So I feel like I should be playing h6. Idea being knight g4. But will this be good enough? Knight g4, threatening the mate, and then try to open up the g file. Remember we talked about how it's hard for white to get counterplay on the c file. White has not really made any progress on the queen side. Most of this play has been focused king side, except for the straight of the dark bishops. And this will definitely be a good one to look at with the engine afterwards to see how strong our plans were. I'm trying to predict what white will play here. I really don't know. Knight g3 doesn't feel like it matches the flow of the position because the knight really wants to come to f4. Okay, b4. Going for that queenside play, actually gambiting a pawn temporarily. But rook b1 will probably win the b pawn back. They might think that I'm stuck over here. Is knight e4 anything? I probably should go for this checkmate threat. There's also a little tactic here. If knight g3, I could take e3 and win the knight. I could see knight g3 being played if the clock was getting low for white, and white is down to under 3 minutes now. I'm really not too afraid of these pawn pushes at the moment. They feel pretty slow compared to this attack. I'm also thinking maybe I should take time to play rook g8 and then do this capture. Get the rook lined up with the king. Since now white's really never going to take me. So the rook on h8 is not very useful. The g file is where the action's going to happen. Pawn g3. So the idea is if I take, knight takes. Makes sense. think I still want rook g8 though. Castling is another option. This is the knight that needs to get into the game. Rook g8, the threat would be g takes, knight g5. That does look pretty good. Let's go for it. This looks like a fun attack still. Because I'm not sure how white's breaking through on the queen side. b5, I can ignore it for a move. a5 I can ignore. c5 I can drop the queen back. Keep her pointed at g3. I think this is probably what I would expect. c5 followed by b5. But maybe it's quicker for white to try to open this, sidestep the queen and play rook c1. But I could sidestep the rook. Okay, king g2. Trying to get this rook in the game. Now, is this the time to move the knight? Let's see, take, knight takes. Knight g5. Because where does that knight go except back to f3? King e7 is very tempting here too, connecting the rooks. I don't think f4 does anything. I could reroute this knight to h8 followed by g6. But maybe that pawn pushes past. I think it's best to take and then route this knight into e4. Let's go for it. Because the f pawn can't easily move. It weakens g3 and the e3 pawn is available for capture. White does have knight f4, but then I'm going to go knight e4, I think. Maybe they'll just take me. Yeah, this bishop is becoming a bad piece. I'm waiting for the right moment to try to just grab that pawn. I did give white what they wanted with that knight there. Okay, so one thing I need to do is try to bring this bishop around, I think. But where do I put my king? f8, f7, e7, d8. If e7, there's knight g6 check, but I don't think it's that strong. I do have to watch sacrifices on f5. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen takes. Let's try king e7. I might put this rook on f8 if I can get out of the fork. Or maybe bishop e8 first is best. Oh, I just thought of king f6. It looks crazy, but could be something. Oh, bishop e8, there's c takes d. Okay, I'm not spending a lot of time calculating this, but I think this is pretty interesting. If f3, I'm going to go knight takes g3. I'm threatening this pawn right away, and if bishop takes, I think I'm going to take with the f pawn and play e5 next. And that'll be my way to free this bishop. So bishop takes, take with the f pawn. With this idea. And if knight check, I can trade a rook for 2 knights because my queen helps attack that. e5 is coming next. f3, knight back to f6, guarding this pawn, and then g3 becomes weaker. So I'm okay with f3. C takes d, e takes d. Or maybe even c takes d back. But e5 is definitely the plan here. It also looks interesting to double the rooks on the g file. Okay, e5, the bishop guards this knight too. I think that's another reason to play it. Let's see, e5, take. Pawn takes here, pawn takes back. Where do I take here first? Reserve e5. Oh, I just realized what I need to do. e5 takes, knight takes. And the f3 square is about to be open. That's what I needed. Take, knight takes. With bishop g4 and bishop f3 coming. I thought I had to take with the queen. Because I think this knight has done his job here. I do have to watch for this queen coming out. My queen guards h6. Queen takes pawn. Pawn takes, rook d1. This looks better. If I get bishop g4 in, I think I'm in really good shape. So I feel like white has to try queen h5 and see if they can make some tactics work. Oh, really? This gives me bishop g4. Bishop g4 looks really good. Bishop g4 looks really good. Clock is getting low. This looks too good to not play it. I could see queen a2 or queen d2 trying to take back here, but I don't think I'm intending to take this pawn. I want to go knight f3 maybe. Yeah, I don't really care about this move right now. Knight f3, threatening knight takes knight or knight takes rook. Knight g6 check could be played. Oh, I think I'm good with that trade. Let's try this. Because I'd still be attacking this rook in the end, and I'll have mating ideas. It's coming really quick. "30 seconds for my opponent." Okay. So knight takes knight, rook takes back, bishop f3 check. Maybe I should play c5 here. Or do I go rook f8? Try to take this knight off the board. I'm not sure. Knight takes knight, rook takes. Bishop check. It does look pretty good. Let's start with this. I like this pawn being stuck here, because the knight and queen are both blocked by their own pawn. And if pawn takes, I can try to activate my pieces this way. I do have to keep an eye on the knight g6 check idea. Hitting two pawns makes sense. Defending this pawn. Queen guards g6 and h6. Trying to enter. I expect queen b2. Queen b2, what do I play there? Queen f6, offer the queen trade. I have a mate threat. No, maybe king f7. I don't think this can be good. Queen block. Queen takes, rook takes. King h2, rook down, take, knight g2. I'm going after this pawn. Does this work? Looks pretty annoying if nothing else. Looks pretty annoying, at least. How do I get out of the checks? Threatening mate. My opponent could miss that. It's pretty hard to stop, I think. How do I get out of the checks? Rook h1 is mate. Even if rook takes bishop, rook h1 is mate. If rook g4 check, I don't know if I even want to take. Because my bishop is helping with the mate. Rook g4 check, can I sidestep the king? Oh, queen d4 offers the queen trade. Alright. Wow, what a game. Alright, let's run this in the analysis. We'll do a game review. This is chess.com's new feature. That was a really interesting Dutch. I like that game a lot. Wow, white had just a nice edge this whole way. Really good game by my opponent. Okay, so let's see. Bishop d3, last book move. I'm going with the traditional analysis mode. So we're looking at a 1-point advantage. Okay, here I do think I should have taken bishop takes a3, rook takes a3. Or g4 followed by bishop takes a3. So that would have definitely been an improvement. But I think like the timing of this was all good. Kind of setting that up. Bishop b4 is interesting. I didn't consider bishop to b4. Yeah, I'll have to check this over with the opening course. I could wait on g5, but I think g5 is really in the spirit of the opening. It's something I wanted to play, and I think here I should just go g4 and then trade bishops. This is probably a little bit too slow. Oh, e5. Yeah, this would have been fun. If bishop takes f5, e4. Yeah, now this bishop comes to life and the attack is still there. e5 was a really good move. So rook g8, I was playing it a little slower. White's still holding an edge. e5 again there was good. Yeah, that was a bad move. So I kind of lost the thread of the attack. I think e5 was key. Find that e5 move, and a couple times in a row, that's going to be my big takeaway from the game. Otherwise, my opponent had a win here. And really, they were controlling the game for the most part. Alright, so let's wrap up the video here. That was my training for the day. I did the 5-minute puzzle rush, played a 15-10. Definitely learned a couple things in this Dutch Stonewall, which we have an opening course on. And there's a link in the description if you're interested in that. And we did this little game analysis afterwards. So hope you guys enjoyed the video of just me training tonight, and I'm going to try to do more training sessions, and I'll try to record some of them as well. So let me know in the comments if you want to see more training sessions, or if you want to see more condensed versions, like maybe me just going over the game instead of playing a whole game and talking through my thoughts. Alright, thanks for watching everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.